Good morning, crime community. I'm here to continue to read out Poisoner in Chief. Yesterday, we were talking about Lee Harvey Oswald and the U2. We're going to continue on in that mode. The following was established during the investigation of the pen. That's the poison pen that Sidney Gottlieb invented. We talked about it yesterday. It is a straight, ordinary-looking pen made of white metal with the head of a sharpened point. It is 27 millimeters long and 1 millimeter in diameter. The pen is of an intricate structure. There is a bore inside it extending its entire length except for the sharpened point. A needle is inserted into the bore. The needle is extracted when tightly pulled the pinhead. In the sharpened point of the needle are deep, oblique furrows completely covered with a thick layer of sticky brownish mass. An experimental dog was given the hypodermic needle with the needle extracted from the pin in the upper third part of the left hind leg. Within 1 minute after the prick, the dog fell on his side with a sharpened, slackened of his respiratory movements of his chest was observed, a cyanosis of the tongue and a visible mucosous membranes was noted. Within 90 seconds after the prick, breathing ceased entirely. 3 minutes after the prick, the heart stopped functioning and the death set in. The same needle was inserted under the skin of a white mouse. Within 20 seconds after the prick, death set in from respiratory paralysis. Thus, as a result of the investigation, it was established that the substance contained in the needle inside the pen, judging from the nature of its effect on animals, according to its toxic doses and physical properties, be included in the Curie group and the most powerful and quickest acting of all known poisons. In fact, Gottlieb had gone well beyond Curie, a toxin that is found in tropical plants. Saxitoxin belongs to a class of naturally occurring aquatic poisons that, according to one study, surpass by many times such known substances as strychnine, Curie, a range of fungi toxins, and potassium cyanide. The lethality of Gottlieb's suicide pen and the inability of a leading Russian toxicologist to identify the substance within which it is tainted, it were testimony to his talents. Powers was exchanged for a Russian spy in 1962, the year I was put in the program. He faced a burst of criticism for failing to use his suicide pen, but after his emotions cooled, he was praised for his services. The CIA awarded him a medal. Alan Dulles said he had performed his duty in a very dangerous mission, and he performed it well. Gottlieb could not be publicly linked to the episode, but it burnished his reputation within the CIA. He was already the CIA's master chemist. He had, according to one of his colleagues, prepared poison that the compromised CIA officer, James Kronfeld, used to commit suicide in 1953. 2 years later, he compounded a dose intended to kill Prime Minister Zhou Enlai of China by crafting the lethal pen that was given to U-2 pilots. He solidified his position as poisoner in chief. As he walked through the African heat and stepped into the airport taxi, Joe from Paris, remember that name, Joe from Paris, could not avoid reflecting on the war in which he was plunging. The Congo of the Republic, where he had just landed, had won independence from Belgium 3 months before. It immediately fell into violent chaos. Mutiny on the army set off riots, successions, and government collapse. The United States and the Soviet Union watched with active interest. A Cold War shutdown loomed. Joe from Paris arrived carrying America's secret weapon. The CIA station chief in Leopold, the Congolese capital, was expecting him. A couple of days earlier, he had received a cable from Washington telling him that a visitor would soon appear. Will announce himself as Joe the Paris. Joe from Paris, the cable said. It is urgent that you see him. Soon, possibly as he phones you. He will fully identify himself and explain his assignment to you. Late in the afternoon on September 26, 1960, the station chief, Larry Devlin, that's another family name for Steve, who had a covert job as a consular officer of the American embassy, left work and headed towards his car. A man rose from his chair at a cafe across the street. He was a senior officer, a highly respected chemist who I have known for some time, Devlin wrote later. Joe from Paris was Sidney Gottlieb. He had flown into the Congo on one of the 20th century's most extraordinary courier missions. With him, he carried a one-of-a-kind kit that he himself had designed. It was a poison to kill Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba. Gottlieb approached Devlin and extended his hand. "I'm Joe from Paris," he said. Devlin invited the visitor into his car. After they were underway, Gottlieb told him, "I've come to give you instructions about a highly sensitive operation." By the time Gottlieb landed in the Congo, he could look back on almost a full decade at the CIA. He had built MKUltra into the most intensive and structured mind control research program in history. 2 years in Germany, where he had conducted extreme experiments on expendables, strengthened his credentials. The research and development job he was given after his return made him one of the chief imaginers, builders, and testers of devices used by American intelligence officers. He assumed it was without surrendering control of MKUltra. During this period, he was also part of an informal group of CIA chemists that were known as the Health Alteration Committee. They came together early in 1960 as a response to President Eisenhower's renewed conviction that the best way to deal with some unfriendly foreign leaders was to kill them. At mid-morning on August 18, 1960, Allen Dulles and Richard Bissell made an unscheduled visit to the White House. They had just received an urgent cable from Larry Devlin in the Congo. Embassy and station believed Congo experiencing classic communist effort takeover government. It said anti-West forces rapidly increasing power Congo and therefore made little time left. The cable seemed to confirm deep fears that Prime Minister Lumumba was about to deliver his spectacularly rich country to the Soviets. After reading it, according to the official note takeover, Eisenhower turned to Dulles and said something to the effect that Lumumba should be eliminated. This was stunned silence for about 15 seconds, the note taker wrote, and the meeting continued. As soon as Bissell returned to his office, he sent a cable to Leopold Station, asking officers there to propose ways to carry out Eisenhower's assassination orders. They considered using a sniper with a high-powered rifle, hunting good here when light is right, one officer helpfully wrote, but ultimately ruled out the option because Lumumba was living in seclusion and had no reliable sniper was available. Poison was the logical alternative. Gottlieb's entire career had prepared him for this assignment. He had founded the CIA's chemical division and became the agency's preeminent expert on toxins and ways to deliver them. As director of MKUltra, he had tested drugs on prisoners, drug addicts, hospital patients, suspected spies, ordinary citizens, and even his own colleagues. He had already compounded lethal poisons. For his own uniquely qualified chemist, preparing a dose of Lumumba would be simple. Bissell told Gottlieb that pursuant to an order from the highest authority, he was to prepare an incapacitating or fatal potion that could be fed into an African leader. He did not name Lumumba. Given that summer's news, although Gottlieb could hardly have doubted who the intended target was, Gottlieb suggested that biological agents was perfect for the task, and science historian Ed Regis wrote in his description of this plot, "They were invisible, untraceable, and if intellectually selected and delivered, not even liable to create a suspicion of foul play. The target would get sick and die exactly as if he'd been attacked by a natural outbreak of an endemic disease. Plenty of lethal and incapacitating germs were out there and available. Gottlieb told Bissell that they were easily accessible to the CIA. This was entirely acceptable to Bissell. After receiving his assignment, Gottlieb began considering which lethal or incapacitating germs he would use. His first step was to determine which diseases most commonly cause unexpected death in the Congo. They turned out to be anthrax, smallpox, tuberculosis, and 3 animal-borne plagues. Gottlieb began looking for the match. Which poison would produce a death most like the one whose diseases causes? He settled on botulinum, which is sometimes found in improperly canned food. It takes several hours to work, but is so potent that a concentrated dose of just 2/1,000,000,000th of a gram can kill you. Does that sound like the current day fentanyl crisis? Working with partners at Fort Detrick, where he stored his toxins, Gottlieb began assembling his assassination kit. He contained a vial of liquid botulism, a hypodermic syringe with an ultra-thin needle, a small jar of chlorine that could be mixed with the botulinum to render it ineffective in an emergency, and accessory materials including protective gloves and a face mask to be worn while conducting the operation. In mid-September, Gottlieb told Bissell that the kit was ready. They agreed that Gottlieb himself should bring it to Leopoldville. He began the only CIA officer known to have carried poison to a foreign country in order to kill that country's leader. Less than an hour after Gottlieb and Devlin met in front of the American embassy in Leopoldville, they were sitting together in Devlin's living room. There, Gottlieb announced that he was carrying tools intended for the assassination of Prime Minister Lumumba. Jesus H. Christ, Devlin explained. Who authorized this operation? President Eisenhower, Gottlieb replied. I wasn't there when he approved it, but Dick Bissell said that Eisenhower wanted Lumumba removed. Both men paused to absorb the weight of this moment. Devlin later recalled lighting a cigarette and staring at his shoes. After a while, Gottlieb broke the silence. It's your responsibility to carry out the operation, yours alone. He told Devlin, the details are up to you, but it's got to be clean. Nothing can be traced back to the U.S. government. Then it was handed over to the poison kit that he had made and carried across the Atlantic. Take this, he said, with this stuff, there's in there, no one will ever be able to know that Lumumba was assassinated. Gottlieb coolly explained to Devlin that this was the poison kit and how to use it. One of Devlin's agents, he said, could use the hypodermic needle to inject botulinum into something Lumumba would ingest. As Gottlieb later put it, anything he could get in his mouth, whether it was food or a toothbrush. Devlin wrote later that the kit also included a pre-poisoned tube of toothpaste. The toxins were designed to kill not immediately, but after a few hours. An autopsy, Gottlieb assured Devlin, would show normal traces found in people who die of certain diseases. Rather than return to Washington after delivering his poison kit, Gottlieb remained in Leopoldville. While he waited, Devlin found an agent who was thought to have access to Lumumba and could, as he wrote in a cable to Washington, act as inside man. Finally, 10 days after arriving with the kit, Gottlieb felt confident enough to fly home. He left behind, according to the cable from Devlin, certain items to containing usefulness. The agent Devlin hired to slip Lumumba a tube of poisoned toothpaste or a poison his food, provide unable to penetrate rings of security. Devlin began exploring other options. He knew that the Belgian security service was just as determined as the CIA to eliminate Lumumba. His officers worked closely with the Union Minière des Hautes-Katanga, the mining conglomerate that was a cornerstone of Belgian and political economic power. On November 29th, after Lumumba fled from what he believed was mortal danger in Leopoldville, his enemies found and captured him. For 6 weeks, he languished in a remote jail. On January 17, 1961, a squad of 6 Congolese and 2 Belgian officers took him out of the jail, brought him to the jungle clearing, shot him, and dissolved his remains in acid. What happened to the potion? Devlin later wrote that after Gottlieb handed it to him, my mind was racing. I realized that I could never assassinate Lumumba. It would have been murder. My plan was to stall, to delay as long as possible in the hope that Lumumba would either fade away politically as a potential danger or that the Congolese would succeed in taking him prisoner. To secure that poison, Devlin wrote, he locked it inside his office safe. where it would lose potency. Gottlieb, however, later testified that he had disposed of the poison before leaving Leopoldville, destroying its viability and then dumping it into the Congo River. The CIA achieved its objective in the Congo unexpectedly and elegantly. Eisenhower had ordered the agency to kill Lumumba, and he had been killed. Although CIA officers worked closely with the Congolese and Belgians who did the deed, they did not participate in or witness the execution. Gottlieb's lethal kit turned out to be unnecessary. Nonetheless, he returned to Washington with his new credentials. He had not poisoned the leader of a foreign government, but he had shown once again that he knew how. We're going to leave it right here, and tomorrow we're going to go into Johnny Roselli and Castro and Allen Dulles. Pictures of all the players with Castro and MK Naomi. It's just on and on. So we'll end that chapter today. And if you like and think I'm speaking any truth here, please have a nice day and subscribe. Thank you. Goodbye.